Welcome to our 2019 Trail Bike of the Year test, and this year we split it into two wheel size categories. In this video we're going to talk about the 27.5 inch bikes. And Al, you did this part of the test, and what were the bikes in your category?
So there were 5 bikes in this category, and in reverse order they were the KONA Hey Hey Trail, the Sonder Evolve GX Helm, Trek Remedy 8, the white T130S, and this bike, the Canyon Spectral AL 6.0.
So this looks pretty similar to the bike we had last year, but has anything changed?
Well, one thing remains the same. Last year it won, this year it's also won. It was the only bike in the entire test to get a 10 rating, but there has been some changes. The key one is that they've taken the tire size down from 2.6 to 2.4 and pumped the travel up. So this bike's now got 160 fork and 150 on the rear, so that's 10 mil more front and rear than it had last year.
Is it an enduro bike or is it a pumped up?
No,
bike?
we actually had a more expensive version of this bike in an enduro bike test, and it's a really good bike, but it's just not a full-blown enduro bike. It's a pumped up trail bike, definitely. But what's really interesting is they've actually managed to keep the BB height the same. So they've increased the travel, but reduced the tire size.
Yeah.
So basically, the head angle's a little bit slacker because of the longer fork, but the BB height's pretty much identical to last year. So like the handling's really good on it.
So, I mean, it's hard to tell probably from the camera, but this isn't actually a carbon bike. This is the alloy frame, isn't it?
This is the AL 6.0. It's the alloy bike, and last year we had the carbon bike. And like, one of the things we get a lot is, you know, it's a sales direct brand. I mean, they've got an advantage, over all the other bikes that basically aren't direct. So what I did was I actually picked a slightly cheaper bike. So this was the cheapest bike in the entire test. It wasn't the winning bike because it was the most affordable. It was the cheapest bike, but also had the best performance in its class. It pedaled as well as the white T130S, but it's got more travel. Its weight was comparable with like the other bikes, but really, what really sold it to me was versatility. Versatility in how you set it up too. So you can run the fork like a little bit harder, a bit firmer in the bars high if you're riding steep terrain. If you're riding more flat, flowy single track, you can like run the fork a little bit softer, keep a little bit more weight on the front end. You've got like 3 compression settings on the rear shock, which actually, I just ran it in the open setting the whole time because this bike pedals so well. It doesn't feel like you're pedaling around like a big kind of long travel, super plush enduro bike. It feels like a trail bike.
So how's the sizing on this one? Is this what size did you ride?
This is an L,
yeah,
and I'm 5'11", and actually the seat post positions on it now is from someone else that rode it that was 5'10", and they actually found that they couldn't quite get their saddle height low enough because the seat mass quite tall. So I'd say like one caveat with this bike is that if you're like 5'10", or if you've got like a long torso and short legs, you wouldn't want to ride the medium because it'd be a little bit short. Like the sizing's really good on the L. Canyon has a thing whereas if you buy a bike and you take it home and you get it home, you take it out of the box, you get on it and you go, oh God, my legs are too short for this. Yeah. You can send it right back and get your money back. Right. There was another criticism of the bike, and that's that, like I said, they pumped it up, they made it more like, they tried to blur the lines between trail and enduro. And one way they did that was that they put a MaxxGrip, Maxx's front tire on. And man, I mean, you've ridden downhill tires, you know what that thing's like. You just can't, it just robs this bike of its inherent speed because the tire is really slow. So obviously we changed all of the tires on all of the bikes to make them the same. We put our own control tires. So we went with a MaxxTerra, which is a medium compound front tire, and boom. It's back to the speed like we've always known this bike has.
But then you've got a really grippy front tire if you ever go to a bike park or the Alps or
exactly. So like you take it off, you put it to one side, and then when you go somewhere with the trains, like maybe where the speed is higher and you've got gravity and you actually want the tire to slow you down a little bit so you're not on the brake. Yeah, exactly. So you're not on the brakes all the time. You've got a brilliant tire for it. Yeah. I'd say like there's also, I mean, one of the advantages of it being the cheapest bike in the test is that you've got budget for that.
Yeah.
Like if you want to put like a heavier case in the rear tire, let's say you don't like the SDG saddle, it's a little bit narrower, a bit too flat for your build. I mean, it's hard to get these things right to suit everybody. Well, you just buy a new saddle and you still get change. How
did this bike compare to last year's one? Did you like the changes that Canyon have made to it?
I like both bikes. I really like the riding position on it. Like I think the tall head tube kind of looks a little bit goofy, but most of the bikes I ride, I've always got quite a few spacers under the stem anyway. It's a little bit slacker, so it's more capable. The sizing's obviously the same. The big tires, I think what you get with going to like we went 2.4, 2.5 rather than 2.6, 2.6. You've got more choice really. You can get a double down case and rear tire. You can get more choice of compounds and casings.
Yeah.
So that's an advantage really for a bike that has to cover like a huge amount of different riding styles. But what you get in the suspension, you took away in the tires, so you kind of, it's give and take. They're both really good bikes, and it's the same frame. So if you wanted to, you could run, I mean, the difference between the 2.5 we have in the front and the 2.6, it's marginal. So you could go back to 2.6 inch tires, especially if you were, let's say, the BB height in this bike I think is perfect. You really feel in the bike. You've got loads of pedal. Still got enough pedal clearance when you're climbing and stuff. And then, like I said, you can prop the shock up with the compression adjuster if you need more elevation for the BB. Yeah. But let's say you ride somewhere where there are big chunky rocks and there's more technical climbs, and that's what you're really into. Well, then you could just go to the 2.5 front and rear or 2.6 front and rear and just lift the bike up a little bit, and that'll give you clearance. Yeah. So there's definitely advantages being able to have both options.
So was it a close run thing for the overall win, or was it the other contenders pretty good as well? Who were the standouts? I
mean, all the bikes were reasonably good. I mean, like at either end, I think the standout bike at the lower end was the KONA, because it felt like a bike from 5 years ago. It really stood out. I mean, it had a 10-speed drivetrain, it had a spindly 32mm snatch and fork, it had a 70mm stem. I mean, actually the sizing and the steep seat angle and stuff and like were really contemporary, but just the build kit really let it down.
Right.
Then we had like the Sonder and the Trek, and both of those bikes were nice, but sort of suffered from the same problems. They were both a little bit short and a little bit high. And with the Sonder, obviously, you had like amazing Cane Creek suspension front and rear, but you actually need to know what you're doing to set that up. And with the Trek, you had like lower level suspension, but a way more polished frame.
Yeah.
So both those bikes kind of like, they gave something, but they both missed out really on like, both had the BBs were a little bit high, the bikes were a little bit short, and really couldn't compete with the kind of capability of this bike. So really for me, it came down to the Canyon and the white T130S. And with the T130S, you got less travel. It's quite a specific style of trail bike. Super capable, super progressive geometry, super progressive sizing. In fact, I tried the medium and the large, and we started off in the large, and then I tried a medium, and I actually preferred the ride of the medium because white bikes are so big. Yeah. It just put the handlebars more where I want them for loading in corners and for sprinting and stuff. So that's definitely something people should be conscious of. All of the bikes in this test were size L, but the white was probably a full frame size bigger than anything else. Right. So that's why you can go back to a medium and still be like in the ballpark sizing. Tight reactive ride on the white, pedals real good, but like I preferred having that buffer of the extra travel. And there didn't seem to be any penalty to have it either because the bike pedals real good. Obviously you got a little bit more movement on the fork when you're climbing and stuff because you've got like a 160mm fork versus 140. But you know, that's a small price to pay for how much more capable the bike is on the descents. You can just ride steeper, rougher tracks on this bike and do all the same climbs and ride all the same flowy trails just as well. So I'll take the longer travel bike for sure.
So one other thing, last year there was some very unfortunate timing. Like as soon as we went to print with the Spectral as our trail bike of the year, then there was a recall on, was it a recall?
I don't even know. I don't know if it was a recall or
was an issue with chainstays, wasn't there?
So there was I think they had because obviously aluminium chainstays even on the carbon bikes.
Yeah.
Had an issue with a weld that wasn't done correctly. So they had some bikes that were cracking on the chainstay. I mean, in fact, we had a bike that did that. I mean, the test bike we had did that. Yeah. And then Jason's long-termer was sent back to be checked.
This was all after the Trail Bike of the Year test, wasn't it?
Exactly. But like all brands have issues. It's it's pretty complex to make a bike, and like I think as long as the customer service was in place, it's and they were kind of proactive about it, trying to get in there early and solve the problem. But I mean, that could happen to any bike.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems to be. I mean, we haven't had any issues with the replacements.
No, and I haven't heard of like people complaining about, oh yeah, that bike you gave 10 out of 10, they all cracked and stuff. So like I think they handled it really well. So
an incredible all-rounder, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
A lot of potential in there, but also a really versatile bike.
Yeah, and like I said, it's the cheapest bike in the test. But that's not why it's the winner. It was also the best performing bike, and like so you can have your cake and eat it. It's great.